And please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. So I matched with this girl named Lily. Her profile looked pretty normal, a couple of beach pics, a dog, a caption about loving Thai food. Nothing that screamed chaos. We started talking and she was quick with replies, funny too. We vibed on movies, food, and that we both hated the small talk people do on Tinder. She seemed chill. After a week of back and forth, we planned to meet at this restaurant downtown, kind of cozy, dim lighting, a good spot for a first date. When I got there, she was already sitting at a corner table. She smiled when she saw me and waved me over. First impression? She looked way better in person. She had that kind of calm energy that makes you feel like the night's gonna go smooth. We ordered drinks, started talking, and it all felt easy. No weird pauses or awkward silences. I remember thinking, damn, this might actually be a normal date for once. Then halfway through, she started acting a bit off. Like she'd check her phone more than usual, and her eyes would flick to the side every few minutes. At first, I thought she was nervous or maybe waiting for a friend or something. But then I noticed her glance wasn't random. It was toward another table near the window. There was this guy sitting alone, pretending to scroll on his phone, but he was totally not reading anything. Every time Lily laughed, his eyes moved up. Every time she leaned forward, he did too. I started to piece it together, but it still didn't click right away. Then out of nowhere, she let out this nervous laugh and said she had something to tell me. I thought she was about to say she'd met someone else or maybe she was moving soon, something basic like that. But she looked me dead in the eyes and said she wasn't really on Tinder to date. My brain paused right there. She said she made the account to test if her boyfriend would cheat. And then she said the words that hit like a hammer, "You were the test." For a second, I didn't even react. I thought it was a joke. Then she tilted her head toward the guy by the window and said, "That's him." I turned, and the dude was staring right at me. No smile, no wave, just blank eyes. It felt weirdly silent, like the whole restaurant sound dropped out. I sat there trying to process if I was mad or embarrassed or just confused. All I knew was I felt like an idiot for showing up thinking I was on a date. Lily tried to explain, saying she'd made the profile to see if her boyfriend would swipe on her. But then he told her she was being paranoid, so she made the fake account anyway. Except he found out, and instead of arguing, he told her to keep it going, to see what kind of guys would match with her. That's when I realized this wasn't just a test for him, it was a whole game between them. They'd been using me as a prop in their twisted couple experiment. The guy got up from his table and walked over. He wasn't aggressive or anything, just calm in that creepy way. He thanked me for helping them out. Literally said that. I remember wanting to laugh because it was so surreal, but it wasn't funny. Lily looked down, embarrassed, but not enough to stop him. I could feel people around starting to notice something was weird, so I just said I was done and got up. The waiter looked confused when I left cash for my drink and walked out. Outside, I stood by my car for a second trying to wrap my head around it. I kept thinking about all our messages, how normal it all felt, how she even talked about her favorite shows like any other person. But every word she said had been part of a setup. I wasn't even the target. I was background noise in their relationship drama. I drove off and halfway home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. "Sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. You seemed really nice." That just made it worse. Like if I seemed that nice, maybe don't drag me into your personal circus. I didn't reply. I blocked her number and deleted Tinder that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I realized how messy people can be when they mix dating apps with trust issues. A few weeks later, a buddy of mine mentioned he'd matched with a girl named Lily who looked familiar. I didn't say anything, but I had a feeling it was the same one. Part of me wanted to warn him, but another part thought, maybe he'll see through it faster than I did. I still think about that guy sitting there, watching the whole thing play out like some reality show he was directing. It made me wonder if he even cared about her, or if the whole thing was just about control. Now, whenever someone brings up Tinder dates, I always think about that night. Not because it was dramatic, but because it showed me how strange people can get when they want to prove something. That date wasn't about meeting someone or connection. It was about a couple trying to one-up each other while dragging random people into it. The wildest part, I never told anyone the full story till now. Every time I started, it sounded too insane to believe. A girl using a stranger to test her boyfriend's loyalty, and him just sitting there like a judge on a reality show. But it happened. I saw it. I lived through it. And now I just don't take first dates too seriously anymore. You never really know what's behind the screen until it's too late. The night started out like any other awkward Tinder meetup. I wasn't even planning to go, to be honest. I'd had one of those days where everything dragged, but Marcus had been persistent for a week. His texts were confident, not over the top, just the right kind of funny. He looked normal too, which is saying a lot. He had this clean-cut vibe, kind of guy who probably irons his t-shirts. I figured one drink couldn't hurt. We picked this mid-tier Italian place. Nothing fancy but decent lighting and a killer garlic bread smell that hits you the second you walk in. I got there first, sat at a booth, and checked my phone a dozen times before he showed up. He walked in wearing a navy button-up and jeans, looking exactly like his photos. No catfish situation, which was a relief. He smiled like he was already comfortable, and I thought, all right, this might be easy. From the jump, Marcus was smooth. The kind of smooth that makes you lower your guard a bit. We talked about random stuff, music, bad TV shows, weird Tinder messages. He said he worked in real estate, which explained the polished tone and the too perfect posture. I remember thinking he must practice small talk in front of mirrors. But he wasn't boring. He asked about my week like he actually cared, and I caught myself smiling a lot. Halfway through the meal, just when it was starting to feel normal, everything flipped. I noticed his eyes dart toward the entrance, then away quick. The waiter came over with water, and I caught Marcus fidgeting under the table. He looked tense, but I brushed it off until I heard someone behind me clear their throat. Loud. I turned, and this woman, pregnant, maybe 7 or 8 months, stood there. She wasn't crying or yelling, just staring straight at Marcus. I swear, the air in that room changed instantly. He froze like a kid caught stealing cookies. She looked at me next, and in his flat voice said, "So this is her." For a second, I thought I'd misunderstood. I looked back at Marcus, and he just sat there speechless. Then she dropped the bomb. "I'm his wife." My stomach sank. I didn't even know what to say. She wasn't wearing a ring, but she didn't need one. The way she said it. The tone. It wasn't some bluff. It was real. Marcus tried to get up, mumbling something like, "It's not what it looks like," which is always what people say when it's exactly what it looks like. She told him to sit down. He did. Everyone around us was pretending not to stare, but you could feel the tension like heat. She pulled out her phone and showed him something, his location on a map. She said she tracks his phone because she doesn't trust him anymore. And then she looked right at me and said she wanted to meet the kind of women he lies to. Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm, steady, scarier than yelling. I felt like my skin was crawling. My fork was still halfway to my mouth. Marcus kept whispering her name like that was going to fix anything. The woman just stood there, tapping her screen, then turned to me again and said she didn't blame me. She said he'd been doing this for months, always claiming he was single but separated. That word, separated, must have been his go-to lie. I just sat there, wishing I could vanish. Finally, Marcus stood up and reached for her arm, but she pulled back. She told him she'd already packed his stuff and left it on their porch. Then she gave me this tight smile that wasn't even mean, just tired, and said, "Sorry you had to find out this way." And she walked out, just like that. He stood there for a second, looking like he'd just been hit by a bus. Then he sat back down and tried to explain. I didn't want to hear it, but he started talking anyway. Said they were basically done, that she was being dramatic, that she had trust issues. I asked him why she was pregnant if they were so done. He didn't answer, just looked at his hands and mumbled something I didn't catch. I didn't finish my pasta. I asked for the check, and the waiter looked at me like he already knew I wasn't paying for both. Marcus didn't even argue. He looked like his whole world just folded in on itself. I threw down $25 for my half, got up, and left. Outside, it hit me how bizarre the whole thing was. You go on these dates thinking maybe you'll meet someone nice. Maybe you'll have a story to laugh about later. Not this. Not a real-life soap opera with a pregnant wife tracking her husband's phone to crash dinner. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just replaying her face, how calm she'd been. That's the part that stuck with me, the calm. Like this wasn't even the first time she'd caught him. A few days later, he texted. Said he was sorry. Said he wanted to explain, for closure. I deleted it. There's nothing to close when the door was never open. Weeks passed, and one of my coworkers mentioned seeing a guy at a coffee shop arguing with a pregnant woman. I didn't ask questions, but deep down I knew it was him. You can spot a mess even from a distance. I don't think I'll ever forget how fast the mood flipped that night. One second it was jokes about bad dates, next second it's a public breakup over pasta. The worst part is that I almost believed he was single. He had this way of making his lies sound like truth. I guess that's how people like him operate. They rehearse until the story sounds natural. Now when someone says they're single, I don't take their word for it. Not right away. I look for the tells, the phone flipped face down, the vague answers about weekends, that's complicated type phrases. That night made me notice patterns I never cared about before. And honestly, I still think about her sometimes. The wife, how she handled it. There was no drama, no scene, just quiet exposure. She probably went home that night and finally slept after weeks of wondering. Meanwhile, Marcus probably sat in his car, wondering how it all fell apart so fast. I drove past that same restaurant a few months later. New name on the sign, new coat of paint, but I swear I could still picture that exact booth. Meet Marcus and his wife standing there like three characters in a story I didn't sign up to be in. Every time I walk into a date now, I scan the room automatically just in case someone's about to walk in with a baby bump and a tracking app. Sounds paranoid, but once you live through something like that, you learn fast. That was the night I read the reality of modern dating. You're not just meeting someone, you're meeting whatever secrets they've decided to drag along with them. I didn't even want to go on that second date. The first one was decent but not crazy good, just fine. Jan worked in marketing, I worked in finance, and we met on Tinder like half the world seems to now. She had a sharp sense of humor, kind of sarcastic, but in a way that made her sound confident, not mean. We'd gone to a rooftop bar for the first date, talked for hours about travel and bad bosses, and ended up planning a second one without really thinking about it. She picked the place this time, a little spot by the river that had outdoor seating and live music. I got there a bit early, grabbed a drink, and watched the boats go by while the sun dropped. When she showed up, she had that long day but pretending I'm fine look. You could tell she was trying to shake off something. Still, she smiled, gave me a quick hug, and sat down. I figured she just had a rough day at work, so I didn't ask right away. We ordered food, talked about random stuff like travel plans, and how everyone on Tinder has a dog pic phase. She laughed more this time, a bit looser. She told me she'd been working crazy hours because her company had a big client pitch coming up. I joked about how everyone in marketing acts like their job is saving the world, and she laughed hard at that. For a minute, everything felt easy. Then somewhere between the second drink and dessert, her mood shifted. Not in a dramatic way, just a small flicker. She went quiet, looked down at her phone, then took a deep breath. I could tell something was coming. She said she needed to tell me something, but that it might sound weird. I thought it was going to be something basic like she was moving soon or still kind of seeing someone. Nope. She told me she got fired that morning. Fired. Like same day as our date. I didn't know how to react, so I just asked what happened. That's when she dropped the twist. She said she got fired for dating me. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Turns out our company had a rule about client relationships. Apparently, the finance firm I work for is one of our company's biggest accounts. She said after our first date, she mentioned it to a coworker without thinking, just casual talk about how she met someone cool. The next day, word got around to her boss, and suddenly HR got involved. They told her it was a conflict of interest and that it could compromise professional boundaries. She said she tried to argue that she didn't even realize we were connected through work, but they didn't care. She was out by noon. I sat there kind of stunned. I didn't even know she worked for that agency. I mean, it's a big company. We have multiple vendors. It wasn't like she was managing my personal stuff. I told her that, but she just laughed a little and said it didn't matter. They wanted to make an example out of someone, and she was the unlucky one. I asked her why she still came to the date after all that, and she said she didn't want to end the day on a low note. She said she wanted something normal before she had to deal with job hunting again. That actually made me respect her more. She didn't make it about blame or pity. She just wanted a few hours of pretending things weren't falling apart. Still, I couldn't help feeling guilty. Like she got fired because of me, and I didn't even do anything. She brushed it off, though, said she didn't regret meeting me. I could tell she meant it, but there was this look in her eyes that said she was still replaying how fast everything unraveled. We stayed at the restaurant longer than I expected. Talked about what she wanted to do next, how she'd always wanted to go freelance anyway. I could tell she was trying to convince herself it was for the best. When the check came, I offered to cover it, but she insisted on paying her half. Said she didn't want charity. I respected that too, even though it felt weird splitting a bill after hearing she'd just lost her job. After dinner, we walked along the river for a bit. The air was cooler, quiet except for the sound of traffic in the distance. She said maybe this was the universe telling her she needed a break. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes silence fits better than fake comfort. When we said goodbye, it didn't feel like a goodbye, more like a pause. She hugged me tight, like she needed it, then smiled and said she'd text me later. I watched her walk away and wondered if she really would. She did. That night, around midnight, she texted that she read her termination email again and noticed something that pissed her off. Her manager had half the department. She said she felt humiliated. I didn't know how to fix that, so I just told her she didn't deserve it and that she'd land somewhere better. It felt like a weak answer, but she said thanks. Over the next week, we texted a few times. She said she'd started updating her resume and had a few interviews lined up. I wanted to meet again, but I could tell she wasn't in the mood for dating. She was trying to get her life steady again. Then, about a month later, I saw a post on LinkedIn. Jen had started her own marketing consultancy. The caption said something about turning setbacks into beginnings. It had like 300 likes and comments full of "you got this" and "so proud." I didn't react to it, but I smiled when I read it. We never went on a third date. No fight, no drama. It just faded. But that story stuck with me. Every time I meet someone new, I think about how weird it is that a random date can ripple into someone's whole career. Like imagine losing your job over dinner with someone you barely know. Sometimes I replay that second date and wonder if she blamed me more than she let on. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. She never said anything, but I could see a flicker in her expression that night, like she was trying to hide frustration behind a smile. Maybe she didn't want me to feel bad, or maybe she just didn't want to give her company the satisfaction of ruining her night too. The world's small, though. A few months after that, one of my coworkers mentioned a new consultant they were hiring for a campaign. Her name came up. January, I didn't say anything, but I caught a glimpse of the email chain, and yeah, it was her. She was working with us again, just from the other side. Freelance this time. No boss to fire her over a dinner she didn't regret. Funny how things loop back around like that. I met Tommy on a Thursday night after work when I was already half done with dating apps. I wasn't looking for anything deep, just a chill hangout, something that didn't end with ghosting or some long essay about timing. His profile looked normal enough. One photo at a hiking trail, one in a hoodie at some concert, nothing that screamed weird. His bio said he was into honesty and good stories, which sounded corny but harmless. We matched, started chatting, and he was quick to reply. He had this easy way of talking, like he could turn anything into a joke. We didn't have some intense connection, just casual vibes. After a few days, he asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. I said sure. Coffee felt low effort and safe. The cafe he picked was one of those trendy ones that tries too hard to look effortless. Plants hanging from the ceiling, chalkboard menus, people typing on laptops pretending to work on screenplays. I got there early, ordered an iced latte, and waited. He showed up 5 minutes late, hair a little messy, holding a notebook like he'd been working on something before coming. He smiled easy, said he liked my shoes, and sat down like we'd done this 100 times. From the start, Tommy was good at keeping conversation moving. He asked questions that felt thoughtful, but not too personal, like he'd done this before and knew how to make someone open up. We talked about random stuff, worst jobs we'd had, favorite food spots, weird hobbies. He mentioned he was doing a post-grad project in psychology, which made sense with how curious he was. He said he was researching interpersonal connection and authenticity, which I thought sounded smart, but I didn't ask for details. The date went fine. He was a little intense at times, like he'd analyze what I said instead of just vibing with it, but I brushed it off. After an hour, he asked if I wanted to grab food nearby. I said yeah, why not? It was still early and I was having an okay time. We went to a burger place down the street, and that's when things got slightly weird. At one point, I noticed he kept glancing down at something near his jacket pocket. I thought it was his phone at first, but he wasn't checking messages. He was making sure something was working. It bugged me, but I didn't want to sound paranoid, so I just let it go. The night ended normal enough. He walked me to my car, said he had a great time, and texted me later saying he wanted to see me again. So we did. The second time we met, it was at a park, nothing fancy. We walked around, grabbed smoothies, sat by a pond. He was quieter this time, but still easy to talk to. Then out of nowhere, he said he needed to tell me something. I braced for something bad, like he had a girlfriend or was moving away. What he said next was way weirder. He told me he'd been recording all his dates. At first, I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said it calm, like it was totally fine, and explained that it was part of his psychology project. He wanted to analyze how people present themselves in early stages of connection. Basically, every day he went on, he recorded the audio, our conversations, reactions, tone shifts, all of it. I just sat there staring at him, smoothie halfway in my mouth, trying to figure out if he was serious. He said he wasn't doing it to spy or invade privacy. He said it was data. That word made it sound worse, not better. I asked if he recorded me. He nodded, totally unfazed, like it wasn't a big deal. Said the first date was already logged in his notes. That's when I started getting pissed. Not just because it was creepy, but because he acted like it was normal. Like I should be flattered I was part of some research. I told him that's not cool, that people should at least know when they're being recorded. He shrugged and said he didn't want to alter the authentic interaction. His tone was so casual it made my skin crawl. He pulled out his little recorder from his pocket, a small black device, not even a phone. Said he usually kept it on him in case something interesting happened. He even had a little notebook full of scribbles, timestamps, and random quotes. My name was on one of the pages. He tried to show me, but I told him to stop talking. He said his professor didn't know the full extent of how he collected his data. I remember that exact phrasing, the full extent, which meant even the people he worked under probably wouldn't be okay with it. I asked if anyone else had found out. He said one girl did and threatened to report him, but he convinced her not to. That's when I knew I needed to leave. I stood up, told him to delete everything from our date. He said he couldn't because it was part of his date set. I didn't even answer. I just walked off. My phone started buzzing with texts from him before I even got to my car. Stuff like "you're overreacting," and "I promise it's harmless." I blocked him right there. Later that night, I kept thinking about how normal he'd seemed, how many other people he must have done this to without them ever knowing. It made me rethink every moment from that first date, every laugh, every story, every second of what I thought was genuine. Somewhere there was a recording of it, being studied like a bug under glass. A week later, one of my friends said she saw a post on a psychology student forum about real-time behavioral data collection from dating platforms. No names, the details lined up too well. I didn't follow up, but I had a feeling it was him. Part of me wanted to report it, but honestly, I just wanted to move on. The idea of hearing his voice again or explaining it to someone felt exhausting. So I just let it fade. Months passed, and I almost forgot about him until I matched with another guy who mentioned going to the same university. I asked if he knew a Tommy in the psych department. He said yeah, Tommy had been kicked out of his program. Someone had apparently filed a complaint about unauthorized recordings. I don't know if it was me or someone else, but I won't lie. It felt good knowing he got caught. Every time I think back on it, I wonder what you read from all those recordings. Did he actually learn anything about connection? Or did he just end up proving how detached he really was? Now, when I go on dates, I notice everything. The way someone keeps their phone on the table, the angle of their jacket, little stuff I never cared about before. It's not paranoia, it's just awareness. You never think you'll end up as someone's experiment until you do. That's the thing about people like Tommy. They don't think they're doing harm. They think they're discovering something important. But really, they're just breaking the trust they're pretending to study. The night I met Jazz, I almost didn't go because my car battery died that morning and I took it as a bad sign. But I already canceled 2 dates that month, and my friend said I was being dramatic, so I just took the train. She picked this small Korean barbecue spot on the edge of town, the kind of place where the music's too loud and you smell like smoke for hours after. I didn't mind. Her profile said she was quiet but loyal, which sounded harmless. Her pictures were simple. Putty selfies, one with a cat, one blurry group shot. She didn't look fake, which already made her stand out. When I got there, she was sitting in the corner, airtight back, scrolling her phone. She waved when she saw me and smiled, small but genuine. Right away, she wasn't what I expected. She didn't talk much at first, just smiled and nodded a lot, asked a few polite questions, and kept her eyes on her food. I tried not to overthink it. Some people are just shy, right? She laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones, so I figured it was going okay. The place was packed, smoke in the air, plates clattering. I didn't mind carrying the conversation. I told her about my job, random stories from high school, even one about how my landlord keeps breaking promises about fixing the heater. She listened, smiled, and sometimes typed on her phone. I assumed she was checking messages. Everyone does it. Halfway through, I noticed she typed something every few minutes, right after I said something specific. I cracked a joke. She typed. I talked about my sister. She typed. It wasn't full-on texting, more like short taps. I figured maybe she was writing notes for something or messaging a friend in real time for moral support. I didn't want to seem nosy, so I ignored it. When we finished eating, she suggested dessert. I thought that meant she was into the night, so we walked to this bubble tea place nearby. She loosened up a little more there, even showed me a few photos of her cat, which was basically the modern version of trust. She still kept her phone close, though, face down when I talked, then flipping it quick when she typed. The weird part came later when I was walking her to the station. She got a message, and I glanced down by accident. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up and I caught the preview. It said, "He seems nice. How tall?" That froze me for a second. She didn't see me look, but my brain started spinning. I asked something casual, like who she was texting, just to see her reaction. She smiled small and said, "Oh, just my husband." I stopped walking. Thought I misheard. She said it so casually, like she was talking about her cat again. My mind blanked out. Husband. What? She kept walking, totally calm, like it wasn't weird at all. I caught up and asked what she meant, and she said they were married, but they date together sometimes. She said it like it was just part of her routine, like how some people do yoga on Sundays. I didn't even know how to respond. My heart started pounding, not because I cared about being the other guy, but because I'd been sitting across from someone's wife while she lived texted him about me. I asked if he knew she was out right now. She said, of course, he'd picked my profile. That hit me harder than I expected. He'd seen my photos, my bio, everything. He'd approved me like a restaurant choice. Suddenly, every moment for the night replayed in my head. The messages, her phone, her silence, the way she'd smiled after checking it. She wasn't being shy. She was reporting. She must have noticed a shift in my face because she said, "It's not weird once you understand it." I didn't answer. My brain was trying to process the fact that somewhere out there, her husband was probably sitting on a couch, reading updates about me between Netflix episodes. She said they had boundaries and that she was the one who usually went on the first meetups. I asked if that meant he'd be meeting me next, half joking, half terrified. She laughed softly and said, "Only if it goes well." I couldn't tell if she was serious. At that point, I just wanted to go home. The night had gone from normal to something out of a social experiment. We reached a train station, and she gave me this gentle hug like nothing was wrong. Said she'd text me later. I nodded, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. I sat on the train home staring at my reflection in the window, thinking about how many times she'd looked at her phone. How many messages had she sent? What did she say? He talks a lot. He's nice but nervous. Was her husband replying, telling her what to ask next? That night, she actually did text me. Just a simple, "had fun tonight" message. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I asked if her husband had fun too. She didn't answer. Next morning, I woke up to a long paragraph. She said she liked me but understood if I wasn't comfortable continuing. She said she and her husband had been exploring shared dating for about a year. They had rules like always being honest and keeping each other updated. She said it made their marriage stronger. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there trying to picture that setup. Two people who thought dating other people together was somehow bonding. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't judge it exactly, but I knew it wasn't for me. 2 days later, I got another message. This one wasn't from Jazz. It was from a number I didn't know. The message said, "Hey, this is her husband. I just wanted to say thanks for treating her kindly." I didn't answer. I deleted it and blocked the number. For a week after that, I kept checking over my shoulder when I went out, half expecting to see someone watching. It wasn't that I thought they'd stalk me. It was just the idea that my date hadn't really been private. It made every moment feel fake in hindsight. It took me a while to get back on Tinder. Every time I saw someone with a quiet smile or said they were open-minded, I hesitated. Because how do you know anymore? What if there's always someone else on the other end of the phone, watching the whole thing unfold like a show? Still, sometimes I think about Jazz. She wasn't mean, she wasn't lying in her head. To her, it was all honest. She believed it was normal to share parts of her night like that. Maybe for her it was. But for me, it just felt like being part of a conversation I didn't agree to join. It's strange how someone can sit across from you, laugh, eat, talk like it's real, and still be somewhere else the whole time, half in the moment, half texting another life. I didn't even want to open Tinder that week. I was tired of the whole thing. Same small talk, same weird energy, same fake smiles and bathroom mirror selfies. But I was bored one night, scrolling half out of habit, and I matched with this guy named Daniel. He didn't look like he was trying too hard. Just a few pics, no gym mirror, no fish photo. His bio said he worked in film editing and that he liked people who didn't take everything so seriously. Sounded decent enough. We talked for a few days. He was quick with jokes, and not the try-hard kind, just dry humor that landed well. He seemed grounded, the kind of guy who'd rather talk about dumb things like cereal rankings than politics. After a while, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. I said sure. We picked this taco place near the city center. When I got there, he was already sitting outside, hoodie up, drink in hand. The first thing I noticed was that he looked tired. Not just normal tired, like he hadn't slept properly in days. His eyes had that puffy look, and when he smiled, it didn't fully reach. I asked if he was okay, and he said something like, "Yeah, just been a weird week." The conversation started off fine. He was funny, but kind of distracted. Like half his mind was somewhere else. Every few minutes, he'd glance over his shoulder or check his phone, not in a nervous first date way, more like he was expecting something bad to happen. After a while, I asked again if everything was all right. That's when he told me about his ex. Normally, I'd tune out when someone starts talking about their ex on a first date, but the way he said it caught me. He said, "She's been messing with me, like actually messing with me." I thought he meant texting him or something. Nope. He leaned in a little and told me she made a Tinder account under the same name as mine. Same first name. Apparently, he'd matched with her by accident a few weeks ago, thinking it was someone new, and she used that to mess with his head. She made fake profiles with small changes, sent weird messages, even commented on his photos from burner accounts. I didn't believe half of it at first. It sounded like something out of a bad drama, but the way he talked about it didn't sound exaggerated. He looked wrecked. Then he said when he saw my profile, same name, same hair color, he almost didn't swipe. He thought it was her again. But curiosity got him, and he swiped right just to check. Then when we matched, he said he almost unmatched right away because he thought it was another setup. I didn't know what to say. Like, what are the odds of that happening? The more he talked, the more it felt like he was trying to convince himself I was real. He asked weird questions that at first seemed random, like where I worked, what street my favorite coffee shop was on, stuff that felt like background checks. Then I realized he was testing me, trying to see if I'd slip up. I told him I could show him a profile screen if he really didn't believe me. He said no, he wanted to trust it, but his eyes said he didn't. Dinner turned into this strange mix of normal conversation and paranoid tangents. He'd joke about something, then pause mid-laugh and ask, "You're not recording this, right?" Or, "You didn't look me up before tonight." I started feeling uneasy. Not scared, just off balance. It's weird trying to build chemistry with someone who's not sure you're real. At one point, his phone buzzed, and he froze. He showed me the screen. It was a Tinder message. The name at the top was mine. Same name, same profile photo. It wasn't me, obviously. He stared at it like it was proof that he was losing it. The message said, "Having fun tonight." That's when I realized his ex really was playing some twisted game. She'd probably seen him with me through mutuals or maybe location tags and decided to mess with him. I asked if he wanted to block her, but he said he already had, dozens of times. She just kept making new accounts. He looked down at his phone for a long time, like he didn't even know what to do. Then he asked me again if I was sure I wasn't involved. That stung a bit, like I could see he was hurt, but it was weird sitting across from someone who half thought I was an illusion. We wrapped up the meal pretty quick after that. He insisted on paying, said it was the least he could do after dragging me into his soap opera. I didn't argue. He walked me to my car, apologized again, and said he hoped I wasn't freaked out. I told him I wasn't, but that was a lie. I was. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. About that look in his eyes when the message came through. I'd never seen someone look so lost, like he didn't know what parts of his life were real anymore. Over the next few days, he texted a bit. Short messages, mostly checking in, asking if I'd seen any fake profiles of myself. I hadn't. He said a few of his friends told him to delete the app entirely, but he didn't want to give her that satisfaction. He said she'd win if he stopped using it. A week later, I got curious and searched Tinder using another account just to see. Sure enough, there was another profile with my name, my city, even similar pictures, same style, same angle. It freaked me out. I screenshotted it and sent it to him. He didn't reply for hours, then finally just said, "Told you." After that, the messages stopped. I figured he needed space or maybe just decided dating was too complicated now. I didn't blame him. A month later, I ran into him by accident at a bookstore downtown. He looked better, still tired, but not haunted. We talked a bit, small talk mostly. He said he deleted Tinder finally. Said his ex had apparently been reported by multiple people and lost her account. I could tell he was still healing, still piecing his brain back together after all that chaos. Before he left, he said something that stuck with me. You know what's funny? For a while, I didn't even trust my own memory. I'd read our messages like they were fiction. It hit me because I got it. When someone messes with your reality long enough, even the truth feels like a trick. After that, we didn't talk again. I didn't expect to. But every time someone matches with me now and hesitates to meet up, I wonder if they've got a Daniel in their past, someone who turned dating into a mind game. That night still sits in my head, not because it was dramatic, but because it showed how fragile trust really is. One fake account, one messed up ex, and suddenly nobody believes what's in front of them. I met Chris on a random Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep and ended up swiping through Tinder just to kill time. His bio was simple, looking for something real. Bonus points if you like horror movies. I didn't think much of it, but he had this friendly smile that didn't look fake, and his messages were polite, not pushy. That already put him ahead of most people on the app. We started talking, and it was easy. He wasn't trying to flirt too hard or act clever. We talked about dumb stuff like whether pineapple belongs on pizza and how early Christmas decorations are annoying. After a few days, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. I figured why not. He picked a diner on the edge of town that looked straight out of an old movie. Chrome walls, neon lights, and red boots that squeaked when you sat down. When I got there, he was already waiting inside, sitting by the window with a milkshake in front of him. He waved and stood up when I came in, which felt old school and kind of sweet. He looked exactly like his photos. Brown hair, glasses, calm face. The kind of guy who looked like he probably helped his neighbors carry groceries. The first few minutes were normal. We talked about work, families, and favorite movies. He was funny in a dry way and kept eye contact more than most people do. I noticed he watched me a lot, not in a creepy way, just intensely. Like he was studying every small detail. I thought maybe he was just shy and overcompensating by focusing. Then he said something that threw me off. He told me I reminded him of someone. I laughed and asked who, expecting him to say a celebrity or something basic. He smiled softly and said, "My sister." I froze for a second, unsure how to react. I figured he meant personality-wise, or maybe that I looked kind. So I said, "Oh, that's sweet." He nodded and said, "She passed away a few years ago." The air shifted instantly. The noise from the diner, the clinking dishes, the chatter, suddenly felt far away. He didn't sound sad when he said it, just matter of fact, like he read that sentence in his head too many times. I told him I was sorry, and he said, "It's okay. You just look exactly like her." Exactly. Those words hit weird. I didn't know what to say, so I took a sip of my drink and tried to change the topic. But he kept going, saying little things like how the way I tilted my head or smiled reminded him of her. He said her name was Clara, that she used to laugh with her whole face the same way I did. I didn't even realize I'd been laughing that much. It got uncomfortable fast. He wasn't flirting anymore. It felt like he was talking to someone who wasn't there, someone who looked like me but wasn't me. I tried to steer the conversation back to something lighter, movies, music, travel, but every few minutes he'd loop it back to her. She loved that band. She hated that movie. She used to say that exact thing. It was like the more I talked, the deeper he sank into this weird memory spiral. I couldn't tell if he realized how strange it was. He wasn't being creepy exactly. There was no weird tone. But there was something unsettling about sitting across from a guy who seemed to be using me as a memory stand-in. I started wondering if he'd matched with me because of that. If he'd seen my photo and thought I looked like her. The idea made my stomach twist. He noticed I'd gone quiet and asked if he'd said something wrong. I told him I was just thinking about something from work. He smiled softly and said, "You even lie like she did." That one hit too close. I forced a laugh, but my brain was screaming to leave. When the check came, I offered to split, but he insisted on paying. I didn't argue. I just wanted out. He said he walked me to my car, and I didn't know how to say no without making it weird, so I let him. Outside, the air was cool, and the street was quiet. He walked beside me with his hands in his pockets, staring down like he was deep in thought. When we got to my car, he said, "Thanks for tonight. I haven't felt this close to her in a long time." That's when I knew he wasn't fully seeing me at all. I told him it was nice meeting him, got in the car, and drove off before he could say anything else. The drive home felt longer than usual. I couldn't stop replaying everything he'd said. The way he watched me, the comparisons, the soft tone whenever he said, "she." It wasn't just grief. It was like he built a version of her in his head and dropped me inside it. I didn't hear from him that night, but the next day I woke up to a message from him. It said, "I read a few of our messages again. It's strange how much your wording sounds like hers." I didn't reply. Over the next few days, he sent a few more. Not obsessive or aggressive, just strange. Stuff like, "She used to send me the same emojis," or "It feels like you're supposed to be in my life somehow." It didn't sound romantic, it sounded lost. After the fourth message, I blocked him. I didn't feel scared, just sad for him. Grief can do strange things to people, twist memories until they start blending with reality. But it still creeped me out knowing that to him, I wasn't a new person. I was a ghost of someone he couldn't let go of. A few weeks later, a friend of mine mentioned she'd matched with a guy named Chris who talked about his sister a lot. I didn't say anything, but it made me wonder if he was repeating the same cycle, looking for people who reminded him of her, trying to fill that space in his head. Sometimes I still think about that date, about how fragile people can get when they lose someone. How the line between missing a person and trying to recreate them can blur without warning. I never blamed him for it, but it did change how I look at people. You never really know what someone sees when they look at you. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes it's every person they've lost. I met Lisa at a friend's housewarming. Not on an app, not through friends of friends, just old school, in person. She was sitting on a couch in a hoodie and ripped jeans, sipping wine and half watching some Netflix show on mute while everyone else mingled. I sat next to her mostly because I didn't know many people there. She didn't look like she was trying to impress anyone, which was rare enough to make me curious. We started talking, and it was smooth from the start. She had that kind of dry humor that makes everything sound effortless. I cracked a joke about how awkward these parties get after an hour, and she said she'd already planned her escape route before she even got there. That made me laugh, and suddenly it didn't feel like small talk anymore. We spent most of the night talking about random stuff. Dogs, weird coworkers, how she couldn't stand people who posted rise and grind quotes. Before I left, I asked for her number. She smiled, said, "Only if you actually text," and handed me her phone. I did text the next day, and we talked nonstop after that. When we finally set up a date, she picked a sushi spot near the river. It was quiet, low light, the kind of place where you could actually talk without shouting over music. She showed up in a simple black dress and sneakers, hair tied back, no heavy makeup. Just real. Dinner was good. No weird silences, no awkward moments. She asked smart questions and actually listened. I remember thinking she was one of those people who didn't play around with half answers. You say something, she catches the meaning right away. After dinner, we walked by the water for a bit. She told me she deleted Tinder the night before, said she didn't like talking to multiple people at once. I told her I hadn't deleted it yet, but didn't really use it that often. She nodded, but didn't say much after that. We stood there watching the lights from the bridge shimmer on the river. She smiled and said, "Promise me something." I asked what. She said, "Delete Tinder if this goes anywhere." I said something non-committal like, "Yeah, maybe." I didn't think it was a big deal. It was only the first date. She laughed and said, "Fair enough," but there was something behind the laugh, like she was testing me. We hugged goodnight, and she texted me when she got home, said she had a nice time. I felt the same. I figured we'd see each other again soon. But then 2 days later, she went quiet. I sent a message, nothing. Waited a day, sent another. Still nothing. I thought maybe she was busy, so I didn't push it. A few more days passed, still silence. Finally, I checked Tinder, thinking maybe she'd unmatch me. She had. And then I noticed something weird. She blocked me. Not just on Tinder, on everything. My number, Instagram, even Spotify. It didn't make sense. We hadn't fought, hadn't said anything off. It was like she disappeared on purpose. I didn't chase it. I just let it go, told myself maybe she met someone else. That's dating, right? People vanish all the time. A week later, I was at work when my boss mentioned his new girlfriend. He just started seeing someone, said she worked in marketing, and was different from anyone he'd dated before. I didn't think anything of it until he said her name. Lisa. I froze for a second, but didn't say anything. There are a million Lisas out there. It couldn't be her. But then he showed me a photo on his phone, proud smile and all, and yeah, that was her. Same girl. I just sat there, nodding like it didn't hit weird, but inside my stomach flipped. She'd gone from a date with me to dating my boss in less than 2 weeks. I couldn't even process it. For the next few days, I tried to act normal. Didn't say a word, but it got stranger. Every time he mentioned her, I felt like I was listening to a recap of my own date. Same sushi place, same jokes, same stories about hating fake motivational people. It was like she ran the same script. The thing that got me was the timing. The week she blocked me was the week he said they started talking. I figured she must have found out we worked together somehow. Maybe she'd stalked my socials and realized the connection. My guess. She decided the boss was the better option and cut me out before it got messy. Smart move, I guess. Still stunned, though. A couple weeks later, she came by the office to drop off lunch for him. I saw her in the hallway before she saw me. She froze when our eyes met. That half second where she didn't know what to do said everything. I just nodded, said hey, and walked past. She didn't say a word. After that, things were awkward for a while. My boss kept mentioning her, totally unaware, talking about weekend plans or little things she'd said. It became this weird loop I couldn't escape. I never told him. There was no point. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I went on one date with your girlfriend before you. It would just make things weird at work. Months went by, and eventually they broke up. My boss said it ended mutually, which probably meant messy. I didn't ask. One night, out of nowhere, I got a follow request on Instagram. It was her, same Lisa. No message, just the request. I sat there staring at it for a good minute. I didn't accept it. I didn't decline it either. I just let it sit there unread. A week later, she deleted the request. Sometimes I wonder if she did what she did because she got scared of being judged or because she was always looking for the next best thing. Maybe it wasn't about me or my boss. It was about control. Delete, block, restart. Clean slate every time. We never spoke again, but I still think about that moment by the river when she said, "Promise me you'll delete Tinder." I should have known right then she wasn't asking. She was deciding. Now, whenever someone talks about deleting apps after one date, I just nod and change the subject. I've lived long enough to know that people don't always mean what they say when they talk about clean slates. Some just want to erase their own reflection. My friend dared me to go on 3 Tinder dates in 1 month. I wasn't even into the idea. Dating apps are basically chaos with a search bar. But I agreed just to prove I wasn't emotionally unavailable, as she put it. Coco was the second match I met during that streak. His name already stood out, Coco. I thought maybe it was a nickname or some kind of inside joke, but he said it was real. His messages were sweet but short. He wasn't flirty or weird, just direct. I liked that. He said he loved cooking and that he'd make dinner for me if I ever came by. I laughed it off, but after a week of talking, he actually invited me over for dinner. Normally I'd say no to a first date at someone's house, but something about him seemed grounded. He didn't give me the usual bad vibe. He even sent me a photo of the food he was planning to make like a professional, so I said yes. His house was about 20 minutes away in this quiet neighborhood where all the houses looked cloned from a catalog. I got there around 7, nervous but curious. When I knocked, he opened the door with a huge grin and an apron that said, Head Chef Coco. He was tall, clean-shaven, and looked more relaxed than in his pictures. The place smelled incredible, garlic, butter, and something baking in the oven. He welcomed me in like we'd known each other for years. His living room was neat, almost too neat, like it had been staged by a realtor. I noticed family photos on the wall, him, his mom, and some cousins maybe. I complimented the decor, and he said his mom helped him set it up when he bought the place. I thought that was sweet. He seemed like one of those guys who actually called their mom instead of ghosting her. Dinner was amazing. He made some kind of creamy pasta with grilled shrimp, garlic bread, and a salad that probably had more ingredients than I'd ever use in my kitchen. We talked about everything: movies, food, travel, family. He was funny in a calm way, not trying to impress me. I remember thinking it was one of the easiest dates I'd ever had. Then halfway through the meal, I heard a door open down the hall. Coco didn't react, so I figured it was maybe a roommate or something. But then I heard footsteps, and then a woman's voice. Is this her? I froze mid-bite. Coco looked embarrassed for the first time all night. Then this older woman walked into the dining room, his mom. She was holding a binder. Not just any binder. It was pink and covered in stickers that said things like forever and happily ever after. Coco stood up and said, Mom, I told you not yet. Not yet. She smiled at me warmly like this was the most normal thing ever and said, You must be the girl from the app. I'm so happy you could make it. I've heard so much. I didn't even know how to respond. She walked over, sat down next to Coco, and opened the binder. It was filled with wedding ideas, color palettes, table setups, floral arrangements, even printed pictures of venues. I could see tabs labeled guest list, menu, and honeymoon. Coco covered his face with his hands and muttered, she was just excited. Excited? She was showing me centerpiece options like we'd been engaged for months. I sat there, trying to figure out if this was a prank or if they were just like this. His mom flipped a page and said, I think lavender and cream would look nice for your skin tone. I actually laughed out of shock, not a nervous giggle like a full-on laugh because my brain couldn't process it. She looked pleased, thought I was joining in. Coco tried to take the binder away, but she wouldn't let him. She started talking about how she'd been collecting wedding ideas since he was a teenager and that she'd been praying he'd find someone with kind eyes. She said I had kind eyes. I wanted to vanish. I stood up and said I needed to use the bathroom just to escape for a minute. In the mirror, I stared at myself and whispered, What is happening right now? When I came back out, she was still sitting there flipping pages. Coco looked defeated, like this had happened before. I told him maybe we should just call it a night. He nodded quickly, apologizing nonstop. His mom pouted and said, Don't scare her away, Coco. You finally found someone good. I grabbed my bag, said a polite goodbye, and practically sprinted to my car. He texted later that night, apologizing again. Said his mom got overly involved sometimes, and that he didn't know she'd come over. I didn't reply. I just needed time to process that I'd been introduced to a woman who already had our imaginary wedding planned before I even finished my pasta. The next day, he texted again, asking if he could make it up to me. I ignored it. Then a few hours later, I had a message from an unknown number. It was his mom. She said, Hi, sweetheart, this is Mrs. Coco. I just wanted you to know that you made a wonderful impression last night. I started updating the guest list just in case. I didn't reply. I blocked both of them. For a few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The worst part wasn't even her showing up. It was how normal Coco acted about it. Like it was just a minor inconvenience. It made me wonder if he'd done this before. Maybe every girl got a dinner and a preview of the wedding folder. 2 weeks later, a friend sent me a screenshot from Tinder. Isn't this the guy from your dinner story? She asked. It was Coco. Same smile, same bio, same photo of him cooking. But now there was a new picture added. Him and his mom, both wearing aprons, holding a cake that said, Family First. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I never saw him again, but the story got around. Every time someone new joined our friend group, someone would bring it up like an urban legend. Did you hear about the guy with the wedding folder? Now, every time someone says their mom's super involved, I get flashbacks of that pink binder, the tabs, the stickers, the way she looked at me like she was already picturing the grandkids. Coco might have been a good guy deep down, but that night showed me something important. Sometimes the red flag isn't the person you're dating, it's who raised them. It's wild how a person can tell you who they are up front, and you still don't believe them. That's exactly what happened with Olivia. She told me straight up that she goes to people for fun. I thought it was sarcasm. You'd think I'd have learned by now that when someone shows you their red flag, they're not joking. We matched on a random Wednesday. I was in line at the grocery store, half bored, half scrolling, and her profile popped up. She had that confident type of look, chin tilted slightly up, like she already knew she was out of my league but wanted me to know she was generous enough to talk anyway. Her bio said, "Professional ghoster. Don't take it personal." I laughed when I read it and swiped right anyway. We matched within a few minutes. Her first message said, "You seem too normal to be interesting." I replied, "You seem too chaotic to be boring." She liked that. We started talking, and honestly, she was hilarious. Every reply was quick and sharp, like she had a comeback ready before I even sent my message. We set up a date a few days later. Just coffee, nothing big. She showed up 10 minutes late, walked in like she owned the place, sunglasses still on even though it was cloudy outside. She was one of those people who knew exactly how to fill silence without making it awkward. The conversation bounced around nonstop. I was impressed. She had a wild charm, the kind that makes you forget logic for a bit. She told me stories about bad dates her ex, and even one about pretending to be a catfish just to teach some guy a lesson. I laughed, but part of me wondered how many people had said, "You're crazy" to her and actually meant it. She was unpredictable in that way that's fun short-term but terrifying long-term. By the end of the date, she leaned back, looked at me, and said, "You're all right. Don't catch feelings, though." I thought it was just her being dramatic. I said something dumb like, "Too late," and she laughed so hard people looked over. After that, we texted for about a week. Everything was going smooth until one day, nothing. She stopped replying. No warning, no reason, just silence. I figured, okay, maybe she's busy. Day 2, still nothing. Day 3, I got it, he ghosted me. I didn't even feel mad. Honestly, I laughed when I realized it. She literally told me she ghosts people for fun. I guess I just didn't think she'd actually do it to me. So I moved on, deleted the chat, unmatched her, and that was it. End of story, or so I thought. 2 weeks later, I walked into my gym like usual, headphones in, ready to zone out. I turned toward the treadmills and nearly dropped my water bottle. Olivia was there. Not just working out, wearing the gym's new member badge. She spotted me before I could look away. She smiled, walked straight over, and said, "Oh hey, small world." I didn't know what to say, so I just went with, "Guess so." She laughed, like this was the funniest coincidence ever. I asked if she just joined. She said, "Yeah, your gym seemed nice." The way she said it made it sound less like a coincidence and more like a choice. I tried to play it cool, got on a treadmill, put my headphones back in, but she got on the one right next to mine. Out of all the empty ones, she started talking again, loud enough for me to hear over the music. Asking if I'd been going there long, if I came at the same time every day, stuff that didn't sound casual anymore. After a few minutes, she said, "You didn't have to block me, by the way." I took an earbud out and said, "You ghosted me." She smirked. "Yeah, but that's my thing. You weren't supposed to block me. You were supposed to wonder." I didn't even know how to respond. She started running like it was totally normal to say that. I just finished my set early and left. The next morning, she followed me on Instagram. I didn't follow back. Later that day, she posted a story, her at the gym, with a caption that said, "He doesn't know yet." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to laugh because it was so on brand for her, but another part of me was starting to get weirded out. Over the next week, she was always there. Same gym, same time. She'd wave, sometimes wink, sometimes just stare until I looked away. Once, she came over mid-workout to tell me I should switch protein brands because mine was cheap. She said it like she'd known me for months. I finally asked one of the trainers if she'd mentioned me when she signed up. He said she joined right after asking a few questions about a guy who wears gray headphones and runs near the mirrors. That was it. I switched gyms. A week later, my friend texted me a screenshot of a Tinder profile. It was Olivia again. Same pictures, same bio, but now it said, "If you ghost me, I'll find your gym." It sounds funny now, but back then, it felt insane. Like, how do you even deal with someone like that? You can't argue logic with chaos. A month passed before I saw her again. I was out with friends at a bar, and she walked in. Same energy as always. She spotted me, came over, smiled, and said, "Miss me?" I told her I didn't miss being stalked at the gym. She laughed, said, "You make me sound bad." Then she leaned in and said something I'll never forget. "You know what's funny? Everyone thinks I'm toxic, but I just give people what they secretly want. Attention." She wasn't wrong about the attention part. Everyone around her noticed her. She knew how to control a room, make people orbit her like she was the center. I realized that's why she ghosted people. It was power. She wanted to see who'd chase her. I didn't chase. I just said, "Take care, Olivia," and walked away. She didn't follow me that night. 2 months later, she posted something on her story again, some meme about catching ghosts. I didn't reply, but I couldn't help thinking about how she really believed all of it was a game. Maybe to her it was. Maybe she got bored easily and people were just entertainment until they stopped reacting. It's been over a year since then, and sometimes I still see her name pop up on mutual friends' posts. She's always smiling, always somewhere new, always surrounded by people who probably don't realize she's already planning her next vanishing act. Looking back, I think she was one of those people who craved chaos just to feel something. The ghosting, the stalking, the games. It was all her way of staying in control. The moment things got real, she'd disappear. But she wasn't lying when she said she ghosted people for sport. She was just the only one who enjoyed it. I met Jack in the most boring way possible, through mutual follows on Instagram. I wasn't even trying to date anyone at the time. I'd been on this streak of focusing on myself, going to work, the gym, home, repeat. One night, I posted a dumb story of me making pancakes for dinner, and he replied, "Real ones eat breakfast at night." It was such a small thing, but that's how it started. Jack had that kind of charm that doesn't seem forced. He'd send random memes, ask about my day, tell me stories about his dog. He didn't move fast or push anything, which I liked. When he finally asked if I wanted to grab dinner, I said yes without overthinking it. We met at this small Italian restaurant tucked in between two office buildings. It wasn't fancy, just cozy. Brick walls, candlelight, old music playing quietly. He looked better in person, taller, clean-cut, had this calm, confident posture. The kind of guy who looked like he knew what he wanted in life. At first, everything felt normal. We talked about basic stuff, our jobs, how we both hated the morning commute, what shows we were watching. He had a nice voice, low and steady, and he made solid eye contact. It felt easy, until it didn't. About 20 minutes in, he shifted in his seat and said he wanted to ask some real questions. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was serious. He said he wasn't into small talk and liked to get to the truth early. I didn't really know what that meant, but I played along. His first question was fine. "What's the biggest lesson your last relationship taught you?" Standard deep date stuff. I answered, said something about communication, and asked him the same. He said that most people lie about who they are. I laughed a little, but he didn't. Then came the next one. "How much do you make?" I blinked. Thought I misheard. I tried to joke it off, said, "Enough to pay for this pasta." But he didn't smile. He said, "No, seriously. I like to know who I'm dealing with." I just stared at him. He kept eating like it was normal, like we were doing some kind of financial interview. I said I wasn't comfortable talking about that, and he nodded like he was making a mental note. Then he said, "Okay, fair. Let's talk family then. Any mental health issues I should know about." That's when I realized this wasn't just him being deep. He was treating the date like an interrogation. He had a list probably memorized. I said, "Why are you asking me this stuff?" And he said, "Because I don't believe in wasting time." If we're not compatible, I'd rather know now than 6 months in. I told him it was a first date, not a job application. He said, exactly. This is the interview phase. He wasn't even trying to be funny. He had this totally calm, logical tone, like everything he said made sense. I tried to steer the conversation somewhere lighter, but he just kept going. He asked how many people I'd dated, how often I talked to my family, what religion I was raised in, and how I'd raise kids if I had them. Every answer I gave turned into an analysis. If I said something vague, he pressed me on it. If I tried to dodge, he'd say, "You're being defensive." It was exhausting. Halfway through, the waiter came to check on us, and I actually felt relieved just to have a break. I told Jack I needed a minute and went to the bathroom to breathe. I stared in the mirror, debating if I should just sneak out, but I didn't want to be that person, so I went back. When I sat down, he smiled like nothing weird had happened. He said, "Sorry if I came off intense. I just like deep talks." That's when it clicked. This was his version of deep. It wasn't about connecting. It was about control. He wanted data, not conversation. I decided to flip it on him. I started asking the same questions back. He didn't flinch. He told me exactly how much he made, what his parents did for a living, how many relationships he'd had. He even told me he once broke up with someone because her credit score was too low. I thought he was kidding, but no, he said. Financial discipline is emotional discipline. At that point, I knew this wasn't going anywhere, but I was morbidly curious. I wanted to see how far he'd go. He asked what kind of guys I usually go for, and I said, the kind who don't carry a spreadsheet to dinner. He smirked and said, "You think that's funny, but I've actually got one." I didn't believe him until he pulled out his phone and showed me a literal list in his notes app. It had bullet points like traits of emotionally stable partners, signs of inconsistency, and possible red flags. It was detailed, color-coded even. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or call for help. He said he'd been keeping track of dating patterns over the years and that he'd refined the system. He told me I scored well so far, organized, emotionally aware, and slightly guarded but honest. I said, "You realize this is insane, right?" He said, "It's strategic." After that, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I had to go early because I had work in the morning. He didn't look surprised. He said, "That's fine. I can tell you're not the type to commit quickly anyway." I didn't even bother responding. I just paid my half, thanked the waiter, and left. When I got to my car, I laughed the kind of laugh that comes from pure disbelief. I checked my phone later, and he'd already texted me, "You failed the compatibility test. No hard feelings." I didn't reply. 2 days later, a mutual friend texted me saying she'd gone on a date with a guy named Jack who sounded exactly like mine. I asked if he grilled her about family and money. She said, yes, and he kept a literal chart. Turns out, that was his thing. He went on dates and evaluated people like it was a science project. He even bragged about it to her, said he'd narrowed down his ideal partner type to 3 categories and was collecting data for each. It's been a while since that happened, but every time someone says they love deep talks, I flinch a little. There's deep, and then there's Jack Deep. The kind of deep that makes you wish you'd stayed home watching Netflix. Looking back, I think he honestly believed he was being logical. Like love could be solved with formulas and compatibility scores. But the truth is, no one wants to be interviewed. People want to be known, not analyzed. I guess that's what made that date so strange. It was the questions. It was how sure he was that all the answers would give him control. I met Natalie on a random Sunday morning when I was bored out of my mind. I'd been scrolling Tinder half awake, not expecting much. Her profile caught my attention because it looked like she didn't care. The first picture was blurry. The second was her holding a coffee cup and a hoodie, and her bio just said, "I like breakfast more than people." I thought that was funny, so I swiped. She matched a few minutes later and messaged first. That never happens. Her message was simple. "You look like you'd order pancakes on the first date." I said, "That's accurate." And somehow that turned into a full conversation about breakfast foods, bad music, and how neither of us liked hiking, but both pretended to for dating apps. We set up a date for the next weekend. She picked a small cafe downtown, one of those places that looks like it's trying not to be trendy, even though it totally is. When I got there, she was already sitting by the window, drinking something iced, wearing oversized sunglasses even though we were inside. She waved me over, and the first thing she said was, "You look taller than your pictures." I said, "You look more awake than mine." She laughed. It was easy from the start. She talked fast, but I liked it. She had this kind of energy that made everything feel alive. She told stories like she was narrating a movie, full of details that didn't matter but somehow made everything better. I could tell she was used to being the center of attention, but she wasn't annoying about it, just loud in a charming way. The food came, and we kept talking. I told her about my job. She told me about how she quit hers to start freelancing. She said she'd been living off small gigs and pure confidence. I said that sounded terrifying. She said that was kind of the point. About halfway through, I noticed she kept checking her phone. Not in the normal distracted way, more like she was waiting for something. Every few minutes, she glanced down, smile, and then lock it again. I didn't want to be nosy, so I ignored it. Then she pulled her phone out and said, "Hold still." Before I could even ask why, she snapped a photo of me. I laughed and asked what that was for, thinking maybe she was just documenting the date. She said, "You'll see." I didn't think much of it at the time. We finished eating, shared a dessert, and walked around a bit. She was fun to be around. She made dumb jokes, pointed out random people on the street, and made up stories about them. It felt natural, like we'd known each other longer than a few hours. When we said goodbye, I actually felt that rare spark you get once in a blue moon on these apps. Then I got home. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. I checked Instagram, and there she was. She'd posted a photo. It was from our date. My face was clearly visible. The caption said, "He doesn't know yet." My stomach dropped. I didn't even know what that meant. I scrolled through the comments. People were already responding. Stuff like, "Oh, this one's cute," and "Can't wait for the update." Update. Update to what? I sat there staring at the screen, trying to decide if this was a joke or if she just used me for content. I texted her, asked, "What's with the post?" She replied instantly, "Relax, it's just a bit. You look good though." I didn't even know how to respond to that. A bit. To her, I was a bit, a piece of the storyline. I didn't reply, but I kept checking her page over the next few days. The post started getting likes, hundreds of them. Then she posted again, another photo from our date, cropped so only my hand and the coffee cup showed. Caption, "Part 2 coming soon." That's when I realized she was running some kind of weird dating series. I scrolled back through her feed and saw it, post after post of her with different guys. Each one had the same style of caption. "He doesn't know yet. Almost there. We'll see." Each one different guy, different location. I felt sick. I texted her again and said, "Are you doing this for attention or something?" She replied, "No, it's art." Art. That word made me want to throw my phone. She said she was documenting modern dating culture and that it was a commentary on emotional availability. I told her it was creepy to post people without asking. She said I was being sensitive, that the photo didn't make me look bad. It didn't matter how it looked. It was the fact that she'd used me as a prop. I stopped replying after that. A week later, one of my friends sent me her latest post. It was another photo from our date. She added text on top of it, "The one who thought he was different." That one stung. Not because it was true, but because I didn't even do anything wrong. I had been polite, honest, and interested. But to her, I was just another episode. I blocked her on everything. For months after, I hear about her. A mutual friend said she was getting popular on social media for her dating stories. People called her posts raw and real. She'd talk about how men always fall in love too fast, and then she'd post a new guy the next week. Part of me wanted to expose her, to tell people she wasn't documenting modern romance. She was just humiliating strangers for attention. But another part of me didn't want to feed the story, so I kept quiet. A few months later, I ran into her at a concert. She came up to me smiling like nothing had ever happened. She said, "Hey, you were one of the good ones," like it was a compliment. I just nodded and walked away. That night, I checked her page again out of curiosity. There it was, a photo of the back of my head from the concert. Caption, "He saw me again." I didn't even feel angry anymore, just tired. She probably still does it. I stopped checking a long time ago. Sometimes people send me her stuff just to say, "Isn't this the girl from your story?" And I just say, "Yeah." The weird thing is, she wasn't cruel in person. She was funny, magnetic, easy to like. That's what made it worse. She made you feel like you were in on the joke, until you realized you were the punchline. Now, whenever someone pulls their phone out on a date, I get this small knot in my chest because I can't help wondering if somewhere, in some caption I'll never see, I'm just another he doesn't know yet. I wasn't even supposed to go on that date. I deleted Tinder 3 days before, swore I was done with it, but my roommate convinced me to re-download it. Said I was being dramatic. I matched with Ben the same night. His profile looked normal, no shirtless selfies, no entrepreneur nonsense, no bio about hiking or crypto. Just a picture of him sitting on a bench feeding pigeons and a caption that said, I don't take life that seriously. It felt different. He messaged first. Said something about how my playlist must be trash because I liked early 2000s pop. I fired back with something equally dumb, and that was it. We ended up texting all night. He was sarcastic but funny, and he had that rare mix of confidence without being annoying. By the end of the week, we planned to meet for drinks. The bar he picked was this small rooftop place overlooking the city. Warm lights, quiet music, the kind of setting that makes everything feel like a movie scene. When I got there, he was already sitting at a table with 2 drinks, said he guessed what I'd order. He guessed wrong, but the effort made me smile. From the start, the conversation flowed. He was easy to talk to, laid back, and funny in that offhand way that feels real. I told him I'd been on some awful dates lately, and he said, that's just the algorithm testing your patience. He said it with such straight confidence that I laughed out loud. He told me he worked in marketing but wanted to quit soon and travel. I told him that sounded cliche, and he said, yeah, but at least I admit it. Everything about him felt smooth, not fake, just like he'd been through enough awkward first dates to know exactly how to play it right. Then, around the second drink, he said something that made my brain stop for a second. We were talking about exes, not in a deep way, just sharing quick stories. I said something about how mine still like my old posts sometimes, and Ben smirked and said, yeah, my ex still watches everything I do. That's actually why I'm on here. I thought he meant it as a joke, so I laughed. He didn't. He leaned forward and said, no, like seriously, I'm on Tinder for revenge. I blinked. He said it casually, like it was the most normal sentence in the world. I asked what he meant, and he said his ex had dumped him for someone else 6 months ago, and he found out she still followed all the people he interacted with online. He said she couldn't help checking in, watching his every move, so he decided to make that his game, date people she followed just to mess with her. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was exaggerating. But he pulled out his phone and literally showed me her profile. Then he scrolled through his matches and pointed out which ones she followed. I froze when he said, you were one of them. I didn't even know what to say. He must have seen the shock on my face because he quickly added, it's not like that. I actually like you. I just didn't expect you to swipe right. Like that somehow made it better. I sat there trying to process it. I asked if he was serious. He said yeah, but it wasn't weird because he wasn't trying to hurt anyone, just make his ex think he'd moved on with people she found interesting. He said it was psychological warfare, not personal. Psychological warfare. Those were his exact words. I told him it was messed up. He said it wasn't personal toward me. That didn't help. I wasn't sure if I should be angry or just leave right then, but part of me wanted to understand how someone could be that calculated over a breakup. He started explaining how it worked. He'd find people his ex followed, match with them, go on a few dates, post something that looked romantic, and then disappear. He said she'd always react, unfollowing him, refollowing him, watching his stories. He said it gave him closure. It was so weird hearing him say it like he was talking about a sport, like dating was just part of his strategy board. I asked if the people he dated ever found out. He said no, except one, and she didn't take it well. No kidding. I finished my drink fast and said I should probably go. He looked disappointed but not surprised. He said, you're probably going to block me after this, huh? I said, yeah, probably. He laughed and said, fair. I left the bar without looking back. My phone buzzed before I even got to my car. It was a text from him. No hard feelings. You actually seem cool. Don't worry, I won't post about you. I blocked him. That ship in the end, but 2 weeks later one of my friends sent me a screenshot from Instagram. It was a photo of Ben at a rooftop bar. Same angle as the one we'd been at. Same table. The caption said, healing looks good on me. In the picture, you could see my arm, just the edge of it, but enough that I recognized the bracelet I wore that night. He cropped me out and posted it anyway. My stomach twisted. I clicked on the comments. His ex had liked the post. That's when it hit me. He wasn't lying. That entire date, from the first drink to the guessing my order move, was part of his game. I was just another scene in his revenge montage. I deleted the app again that night. I didn't even tell anyone at first. It was too embarrassing to explain. But the story got around anyway. Someone I knew matched with him weeks later and said he told her he was over the whole revenge phase. She said he seemed nice. Maybe he was trying to move on. Maybe not. I don't hate him, weirdly enough. I just think he got stuck. Breakups mess people up in quiet ways, and some people can't let go until they rewrite the story in their favor. That's what Ben was doing, turning pain into strategy. Still, it made me realize how messed up dating apps can get. You never really know what people's motives are. Some want love, some want attention, and some just want someone else to feel what they felt. Every time I scroll now, I think about him and his psychological warfare. How he weaponized something as simple as a coffee date. The next time someone says they joined Tinder just for fun, I remember Ben, and how I accidentally became part of someone else's heartbreak plan. I first met Shama on a random Thursday night when I was stuck in traffic. I'd been sitting there for almost an hour, bored out of my mind, so I started swiping just to kill time. Her profile popped up, big smile, bright eyes, and a caption that said, "I'm not looking for love, I'm looking for data." I thought it was a joke. I should have known better. We matched instantly. She messaged first, "Be honest, are you interesting or just tall?" That made me laugh. I told her I was both, and she said, "We'll see." That's how it started. Over the next few days, our conversations were fast-paced and weirdly fun. She was blunt, but in a way that made you want to keep up. She asked things like, "What's your biggest flaw?" And "How do you handle disappointment?" Questions that felt like they belonged in a job interview, not on Tinder. But she also sent memes and joked about random stuff, so I didn't think too hard about it. When she suggested grabbing coffee, I said sure. She picked this artsy little cafe that smelled like espresso and old books. She was already sitting at a table when I walked in, laptop open, typing something fast. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You're right on time." That's a good sign. I laughed, sat down, and ordered a drink. The first 20 minutes were normal enough. We talked about work, family, travel, all that surface level stuff. She said she worked in marketing but was currently between jobs. I asked if she was job hunting, and she said no, she was doing research. I asked what kind, and she grinned. "You'll see." I thought she was being mysterious on purpose, trying to sound interesting. I didn't realize how literal she was. Halfway through our coffee, she asked if I used LinkedIn. I said, yeah, sometimes. She smiled wider. Perfect. That makes my process easier. I had no clue what she was talking about, so I just nodded. Then she closed her laptop and said, "Okay, I should be honest about something." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever starts with that sentence. She told me she'd been on 40 dates in 30 days. At first, I thought she was bragging or exaggerating, but she said it calmly, like she was talking about grocery shopping. "I've been testing dating patterns," she said. "I want to see how profession, age, and personality type connect to first date success rates." I laughed because it sounded ridiculous. She didn't laugh back. She was dead serious. She said she'd made a spreadsheet with every person she'd gone out with, occupation, income bracket, education, conversation topics, even body language notes. I didn't even know what to say. I asked if she was joking. She said no, she was turning it into an article, maybe even a book, called The Dating Experiment. She said people underestimate how predictable attraction is and that she was proving it wasn't random. I sat there, trying to process the fact that I was part of a human experiment and not a date. I asked if I could see the spreadsheet. She actually showed me. There it was, rows and columns full of data points. She scrolled through dozens of names, each with a score next to them. My jaw dropped. She ranked people. Every person had a rating out of 10 for chemistry, conversation, and potential longevity. She even had a category called emotional maintenance cost. I told her it was insane. She shrugged. "It's not personal. It's research. I asked what my score was. She smiled. I haven't decided yet, but you're definitely not bottom tier. I couldn't even be mad properly because she was so calm about it. Like she genuinely believed she was doing something useful. I asked what she planned to do with all this information, and she said she wanted to publish it anonymously online to help people understand what makes dates fail. She said, "You'd be shocked how consistent the data it is. Engineers always ask about logistics. Artists talk about trauma. Accountants talk about food. It's patterns, not people." I sat there realizing that to her, I wasn't a person either. Just another pattern to measure. I finished my coffee, said something like, "Well, good luck with your project," and stood up to leave. She stopped me and asked if I wanted to opt in officially so she could use my answers in her dataset. I said no. She nodded like that was fine and typed something into her laptop anyway. Later that night, she texted me saying it had been a strong mid-tier date. I stared at that message for a while before deleting it. A week later, a friend sent me a link to a blog post. It was titled "Ranking My 40 Dates in 30 Days." The author didn't use names, but some of the descriptions were obvious. One said, "Finance guy, punctual, polite, too agreeable, low novelty factor." That was me. The post blew up. People were sharing it everywhere. Some said it was genius, others called it manipulative. She turned her spreadsheet into a list of essays about each person, dissecting how they spoke, dressed, and acted. It was like reading Yelp reviews of humans. I didn't confront her. What was the point? I was just one of the many data points. But part of me kept wondering what made her do it. Was it bitterness? Curiosity? Or was it just control? Turning something unpredictable like dating into something she could graph. A few months later, I heard she'd been interviewed on a podcast about her experiment. The host called her a pioneer in modern social analysis. She called herself emotionally detached but observant. She laughed about how some of the guys had gotten upset when they found out. She said, "It's funny how men say they want honest women until they meet one." That line stuck with me for a while. I wasn't angry anymore, just kind of fascinated by how far people go to make sense of things that can't be measured. Dating's messy and unpredictable, and that's what makes it real. But Shama didn't want real. She wanted data. She wanted control. Sometimes I wonder if she ever met someone who didn't fit the pattern. Someone she couldn't reduce to a spreadsheet. Maybe she did. Maybe she'll add another column for unexpected variables. I deleted Tinder again after that. It just felt weird knowing I'd been part of the study, like I'd been graded without knowing it. Every now and then, I'll see someone post her article again, calling it brilliant or honest. I get why people say that. It's raw in a way, even if it's cold. But when I read those words, finance guy, too agreeable, I just remember how it felt sitting across from her while she turned me into statistics. To her, I wasn't a story. I was a number. I met Ryan at a bookstore, which already made him stand out. Most of the people I'd gone out with recently came from apps, filtered through pixels and forced small talk. But Ryan just happened to be there one night when I was killing time after work. I was in the psychology section, flipping through a book I wasn't going to buy, and he asked if I'd read it. I said no, and he said, "Good. It's overrated." That made me laugh, and before I knew it, we were talking about books, podcasts, and how everyone secretly loves judging people. He was easy to talk to. Funny without trying, confident without being loud. He had that kind of energy that made the space around him feel calm. After a while, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee. Normally, I'd say no to someone I'd just met, but it didn't feel weird, so we went. The cafe was close by, quiet and dim. We sat there for almost 2 hours just talking. He told me he worked as a freelance designer, liked hiking, and hated TikTok because it killed attention spans. I told him about my job, how I've been feeling stuck lately. He actually listened. Not the fake nodding kind, but really listened. It was nice. By the end of the night, he asked for my number and I gave it. Simple. Over the next week, we texted a bit, nothing crazy. He wasn't one of those people who sent a flood of messages. Just a few a day, always thoughtful. Then one night, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee again. I said sure. We met at the same cafe. This time he looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "Yeah, just been working through some stuff." I didn't pry. We ordered, sat down, and it felt normal again for the first few minutes. Then he said, "There's something I should probably tell you." I braced myself. Usually that sentence means something bad. He looked down at his drink and said, "You remind me of my therapist." I didn't know how to take that. I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. He said, "No, seriously. You look exactly like her." The way he said it made my stomach twist a little. I asked what he meant by exactly. He said, "Like same eyes, same voice, even your mannerisms." He said it like he'd been rehearsing the words. I tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, but he wasn't done. He said he'd been going to therapy for months to work on trust and vulnerability. Then he said his therapist recently told him to try exposure work, putting himself in situations that made him uncomfortable. That's when he said it. "This is part of that." I blinked. "Part of what?" He said, "This. Us meeting. You look like her, so my therapist thought it'd help me face certain fears if I spent time around someone who reminded me of her." My brain couldn't even process that sentence. I asked, "Wait, are you saying this date is part of your therapy?" He nodded, calmly, like it wasn't weird at all. He said it was nothing personal, just something to help him rebuild emotional trust. I didn't even know what to say. He told me he hadn't planned to tell me, but his therapist said transparency was important. He said he hadn't expected me to be so similar to her in person, but that it was actually helping. Helping him, not me. I sat there in total silence, trying to decide if I should laugh, get angry, or just walk out. He looked completely serious, sipping his drink like we were in the middle of a normal chat. I asked him if his therapist knew he was doing this. He said yes. Apparently, she told him to find a way to practice emotional engagement outside the therapy room. He thought this counted. I told him I didn't feel comfortable being part of his exposure therapy. He said I didn't need to do anything, that just being there was enough. That line made my skin crawl. The worst part was how gentle he was about it. He wasn't some creep trying to manipulate me. He genuinely believed this was okay. He said it like someone explaining their morning routine, completely calm, almost grateful. I told him I had to go. He looked disappointed, like he failed some emotional test. He said, "You're reacting exactly how I thought you would." That sent me straight out of the cafe. I blocked his number that night. 2 days later, I got a message from a random account on Instagram. It was him. He said, "I think I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have told you like that." I didn't reply. He sent another. "You helped more than you realize." I blocked that too. For a while, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every word replayed in my head. The way he said I looked like her. The way he said this was part of therapy. I kept wondering if he was telling the truth or if it was some strange cover story for something else. Then, about a month later, I saw him again, by accident. I was at the grocery store, and there he was in the checkout line. He saw me and waved. I pretended not to notice. But as I left, I glanced back. He wasn't looking at me, he was staring past me at the cashier of his older woman who had the same haircut I did. That's when it hit me. He probably wasn't lying. He really was chasing some pattern, trying to recreate a version of his therapist in every face that felt familiar. I told my friend about it later, and she said maybe it was just his way of coping. But I couldn't shake the thought that I'd been part of something I never agreed to. Like I accidentally stepped into someone else's healing process without consent. A few months after that, someone I knew from work said they'd gone on a date with a guy named Ryan who talked about his therapist a lot. She said he mentioned exposure therapy. I didn't even have to ask if it was the same person. It was. I guess he kept going, trying again with different people until maybe one day he'd stop seeing a reflection in everyone else. I'll be honest, part of me still feels bad for him. He wasn't a bad guy, just broken in a way that made him use other people as mirrors. But that night taught me something I didn't expect. You can't always tell when someone's dating you for connection or closure. Sometimes they don't even know which one they're doing. Ryan probably thought he was healing. I just know I walked out of that cafe feeling like I'd been a prop in someone else's therapy session. It was the middle of summer when the heat made everything feel slow and annoying. I wasn't really trying to date anyone, But Tinder had a way of sneaking back into my life when I got bored. I matched with Samantha after work one night. Her profile was simple: 3 pictures, one of her laughing, one in a park, and one holding a slice of pizza like it was her entire personality. Her bio said, "I only swipe right if you can fix stuff or fake confidence." I thought it was funny, so I swiped. She messaged first, "Can you fix stuff?" I said, "Define fix." She said, "Anything from a chair to a bad day." That made me laugh. She had that kind of energy that felt direct but playful, like she didn't waste time pretending to be mysterious. We talked for about a week, mostly late at night. She told me she worked from home doing freelance writing at a cat named Beans and lived in a rent-controlled apartment she refused to give up no matter what. I didn't think much of that part until later. One Friday night, she asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. She said she loved cooking for people and promised she made the best tacos in the city. Normally, I'd go to someone's place that soon, but she seemed normal enough, and tacos are hard to say no to. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was how cozy it was. Plants everywhere, fairy lights, the faint smell of something spicy cooking. She looked good, comfortable in her own space, and she greeted me like we'd known each other forever. She poured me a drink, and we started eating while music played quietly in the background. Everything felt normal, almost too normal. Halfway through dinner, there was a knock on the door. She froze for a second, then smiled quickly and said, "Oh, that's probably my landlord. Don't freak out." Before I could ask what she meant, she stood up, smoothed her shirt, and opened the door. A middle-aged guy walked in, bald, wearing a faded polo shirt and holding a clipboard. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Evening." Samantha said, "Hey, this is my boyfriend." I almost choked on my drink. "Boyfriend?" The guy looked at me, nodded politely, and said, "Ah, good to meet you." Then he started asking about some maintenance stuff, like whether the hot water had been okay lately. Samantha nodded along, smiling the whole time, like this was just a routine visit. I sat there confused out of my mind, trying to figure out what I'd just been dragged into. When he finally left, I looked at her, waiting for some kind of explanation. She laughed and said, "Okay, so don't freak out." I said, "I already am." She took a sip of her drink and said, "My landlord gives discounts to couples." I blinked. "What?" She said she told him months ago that she had a boyfriend, and he knocked $200 off her rent because he thought couples were more reliable tenants. Apparently, he didn't like renting to single people because he thought they moved out too often. "So," she said casually, "I just need you to pretend we're together when he does his monthly inspections. It's not a big deal." I stared at her. "You're serious?" She nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. She said she'd done this before, that a friend had helped her a few times, but it got awkward because the landlord started asking personal questions about their relationship, so she'd stopped. She said I had the right vibe. The right vibe. Like I was auditioning for a role in a sitcom she'd written. I told her this was insane. She laughed and said, "It's just acting. You don't even have to hold my hand." I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to leave, but part of me was too stunned to move. She looked totally unfazed, like this was a regular arrangement. After a few minutes of silence, she shrugged and said, "You can finish your taco if you want." I stayed, mostly because it felt too weird to walk out mid-bite. The rest of the night was awkward. She tried to change the subject, asked about my favorite movies, but I couldn't stop thinking about how she just introduced me as her boyfriend to a random landlord for a rent discount. When I left, she walked me to the door and said, "Thanks for going along with it. You were great." Like I just nailed an acting scene. The next day, she texted me a photo of the tacos and said, "You're officially part of the discount squad now." I didn't reply. A week later, she texted again saying her landlord wanted to schedule another inspection just to check the smoke detectors. She asked if I could come by and be the boyfriend again. I said no. She said, "Come on, it's easy. You just have to exist and nod." I told her I wasn't comfortable lying to some guy about living there. She replied, "It's not lying. It's rent strategy." That was the last message I answered. A month later, I was at a party, and someone mentioned this girl named Samantha who had been bragging about how she never pays full rent because men love tacos. I didn't even have to ask who they were talking about. Apparently, she'd been pulling this off for almost a year. She'd rotate boyfriends whenever one backed out. Her landlord must have thought she had the most unstable but consistent relationship in the city. Part of me couldn't even be mad. It was kind of genius in a twisted way. But the whole thing still felt wrong. A few months later, she popped up again on Tinder. Same profile, same photos, but her bio was different. It said, looking for something real or rent-related. I didn't swipe. Sometimes I think about her, not in a nostalgic way, just curiosity. How far does someone like that take a lie before it falls apart? Does she still get that discount? Does she still convince strangers to play pretend? The weirdest part is how normal she made it sound that night. Like I was the weird one for thinking it was strange. She said it so casually. My landlord gives discounts to couples, as if that explained everything. That night taught me something weird about people. Everyone's got their version of survival. Some work harder, some cheat systems, some just act their way through it. Samantha's just happened to involve rent and tacos. The first thing I noticed about Alex was how confident he sounded over text. Not in a cocky way, just clear and steady, like he knew what he was saying before he said it. We matched on a random Tuesday night after I'd promised myself I was done with dating apps. He didn't start with some recycled pickup line or the usual, hey. He said, I've got a presentation to convince you I'm worth meeting. I thought it was a joke. I replied, you mean like a PowerPoint? He said, exactly. That should have been my warning sign. At first, I thought he was being funny, just trying to stand out. I played along, told him I'd give him bonus points if he actually made one. He sent back a screenshot, 5 slides, color-coded, with a title that said, Why on a safe bet this time? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. It looked legit, bullet points and all. He seemed funny, creative, maybe a little weird, but in an interesting way. So when he asked if I wanted to meet for coffee that weekend, I said yes. The cafe he picked was small and quiet, the kind of place where every table had a different personality sitting at it. He was already there when I arrived, wearing a dark jacket and glasses, laptop open in front of him. He stood up when he saw me, smiled, and said, Glad you came. You're gonna like this. We ordered drinks, sat down, and before I could even ask about work or hobbies, he turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a PowerPoint, an updated version. Title, Why Alex Should Be Trusted, Despite Recent History. I thought it was another joke. It wasn't. He clicked to the first slide. It said, Context, Previous Mistakes. Under that was a list of bullet points. 1. Cheated on last 3 partners. 2. Learned the value of honesty the hard way. 3. Committed to growth. My jaw actually dropped. He said it like someone giving a business pitch. Calm, professional, like this was a quarterly report instead of a confession. I said, Wait, what? And he nodded. Yeah, I figured I'd get ahead of it. Full transparency. He kept clicking through slides. There was one titled Reasons I'm Different Now, and another that said Proof of Self-Improvement. That one had screenshots of text messages from friends who'd apparently told him he'd matured a lot lately. One even said, Proud of you, man. I didn't know whether to laugh or just walk out. I sat there in stunned silence while he kept talking, explaining how he used to sabotage healthy connections, but had since completed multiple courses on accountability. He even had a graph showing his growth curve. It would have been funny if it wasn't so unsettling. He noticed I hadn't said anything yet and asked, Do you want to see the data on communication improvement? I said, No, I think I get it. He smiled like that was a good answer and took a sip of his coffee. I asked him why he thought making a presentation was a good idea. He said, Because honesty builds trust and structure builds clarity. Like that explained everything. He told me he'd been to therapy, read self-help books, and even joined an online group for relationship recovery. He said he wanted to be transparent about his past because he believed in second chances. The weird part was, I could tell he meant it. He wasn't bragging or being sarcastic. He really believed this PowerPoint was proof that he changed. He showed me one last slide called Vision for the Future. It had a list of goals. 1. Build stable relationship. 2. Continue personal growth. 3. Maintain accountability partner you. That's when I decided to change the subject. I told him we should talk about normal stuff, music, travel, food. He smiled politely and closed the laptop, but kept circling back to his journey. He said it like a brand name, We Journey. He told me his last relationship ended after he got caught messaging someone else. He said he didn't cross physical lines, but emotional betrayal counts too. I asked why he thought he cheated so much before, and he said, curiosity and fear of stagnation, like he'd analyzed it in a lab. By the time I finished my drink, I knew there wasn't going to be a second date. Not because he was mean or rude. He just felt like someone who turned his own mistakes into a project instead of a lesson. Everything he said sounded rehearsed, like a script he practiced in front of a mirror. When we stood up to leave, he asked if he could send me a copy of the presentation. I said no thanks, and he laughed, saying, fair. I'll refine it for next time. On my way home, I couldn't stop thinking about that PowerPoint. Part of me admired the effort. It takes guts to sit across from someone and admit you've been a mess. But another part of me couldn't shake how robotic it felt. Like he wasn't sorry. He was just proud of how well he packaged his apology. 2 weeks later, I was at dinner with a friend who also uses Tinder. I mentioned Alex, and she froze. Then she said, wait, PowerPoint Alex. Apparently he was known. She'd gone on a date with him months earlier and said he'd shown her a similar presentation. Same structure, just fewer slides back then. She said he updates it after every date. Each new person adds feedback. I laughed so hard I nearly spit out my drink. She even said he once posted a clip of it on TikTok, calling it my dating redemption project. It had thousands of views. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about growth. This was his new identity. He turned his own guilt into content. After that, I kept seeing his name pop up online. Little snippets, people joking about the guy with the presentation. He becomes some weird internet legend. I never talked to him again, but sometimes I wonder what happened after that. Did the slides finally work on someone? Did he ever meet a person who didn't laugh or leave? Or did he just keep adding new bullet points, new lessons, new proof of improvement? It's strange how some people turn mistakes into performances. Maybe he really was trying to be better. Maybe he just needed to believe his story was bigger than his past. Either way, I'll never forget the moment he turned the screen around, smiled like a teacher on the first day of class, and said, welcome to the new me. I met Kimberly on a random Thursday night when my friend dragged me to this rooftop mixer thing I didn't even want to go to. It wasn't a dating event or anything, just one of those after-work social things where everyone pretends to network but really just wants free drinks. I was about ready to leave when she walked up and asked if I was the guy from the elevator. I wasn't, but I said maybe. She laughed, said close enough, and handed me a drink she claimed was the least bad one here. That's how it started. No app, no small talk through screens, just a spontaneous, weirdly natural meeting. She was confident in that way where you could tell she got attention without trying. She asked questions fast and answered mine even faster. By the time I realized we'd been talking for an hour, the event was winding down. She handed me her phone and said, you can text me or not. I'll probably know which one you pick. Then she walked off. Of course, I texted her. She replied the next morning with dinner tonight. Not a question mark, though, more like a command. I liked that she didn't play games, so I said sure. She picked the spot, this tiny Korean place that had maybe 10 tables total. The food was amazing, and she knew the menu by heart. The waiter treated her like a regular, and I remember thinking, that's a good sign. We talked about random stuff, travel, food, how she hated slow walkers. She said she ran a YouTube channel, but didn't tell me what kind. I asked if it was lifestyle or reviews, and she said, kind of both. I didn't push it. She had this confident energy that made you want to just go along with whatever she said. We finished eating and she suggested dessert at another place nearby. It was a small bakery that stayed open late. On the walk there, she told me about how she analyzes people for fun. I thought she meant personality types or something. She said she liked watching reactions. I laughed and said, you sound like a scientist. She said, something like that. That night ended great. No awkward pauses, no weird vibes. I actually felt excited about seeing her again, which hadn't happened in a while. Our second date was a week later. She invited me to pick the place this time, so I chose this small Italian restaurant I liked because it was quiet and had good wine. She showed up wearing this casual beige dress, hair tied up, smiling like she already knew how the night would go. Halfway through dinner, the waiter came by and said, camera crew outside tonight, just letting everyone know. I didn't think anything of it. Sometimes restaurants get featured for local food blogs. But a few minutes later, Kimberly's face lit up like she just remembered something. "Oh, that's right," she said. "They might be filming tonight." I looked at her. "Filming what?" She smiled and said, "My channel." I blinked. "Wait, this restaurant?" She nodded. "Yeah, I do hidden camera reviews." At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She explained, so casually, that she ran a YouTube channel where she reviewed restaurants. But the twist was, she filmed her dates too. Not to embarrass anyone, she said, just to capture genuine reactions. I froze mid-bite. "Are you saying I'm being recorded right now?" She shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. "Technically, yeah, but it's for a segment on how people respond to new menu items. You look fine, don't worry." I set my fork down. "You could totally." She looked confused, almost annoyed. If I tell people, they act fake. The point is to get authentic behavior. I couldn't believe how calm she was. I asked if she'd done this with other dates. She said, "Of course. Most people end up liking the video. The comments are always really supportive." I didn't know what to say. The fact that she thought that was normal was almost worse than the filming itself. I said, "So people online have watched your dates?" She said, "Yeah. Don't worry, I blur faces if someone asks. But most don't mind." My stomach turned. She must have seen my reaction because she leaned forward and said, "You're not like those guys who freak out over privacy, are you? It's just content." Just content. I told her I wasn't comfortable being filmed without knowing. She sighed that I was making a scene and said, "Fine, I'll cut this one out. You can relax." Then she changed the subject, like we hadn't just crossed the line between dating and surveillance. The rest of the meal was awkward. She tried to joke a bit, said I'd ruined the shot, but I wasn't laughing. When we left, she gave me a hug, said, "No hard feelings," and walked off. I figured that was the end of it. 2 weeks later, I was wrong. A friend texted me a YouTube link with a message, "Is this you?" I clicked it, and there I was. Blurred, but obviously me. You could tell from my voice, my clothes, everything. The title said, "When he doesn't get it. Awkward date turns sour." The video had over 80,000 views. The comments were full of people analyzing my energy, calling me uptight, boring, overreacting. She cut it to make me look like some controlling jerk while she came off as chill and clever. I reported it, but YouTube didn't take it down. I tried messaging her, but she didn't reply. A week later, she uploaded another video, and in the intro, she said, "Some people can't handle a little honesty." That's when I realized this was her thing, turning dates into content, using people's reactions for views. Eventually, the video died down, replaced by newer ones. But I never forgot it. Every time someone said, "Hey, you look familiar," my brain immediately jumped to that video. A few months later, someone told me she'd started a second channel. This one was behind the scenes, showing her setting up cameras and explaining the psychology of reactions. It had thousands of followers. She built an entire brand out of watching people without them knowing. It was creepy, but also weirdly smart in a cold way. She found a loophole in modern dating, turning awkward moments into entertainment. Now, whenever someone says they're in content creation, I get suspicious. Maybe that's paranoid, but once you've been turned into someone's video clip, it changes how you see everything. Kimberly probably didn't see it as cruel. To her, it was business. Every laugh, every pause, every awkward silence, it was all engagement metrics. I guess that's the thing about dating now. Some people are just looking for connection. Others are looking for footage. The first time I met Jason, I thought he was just shy. He had that quiet kind of energy, the type that makes you lean in a little when he talks because he never raises his voice. We met through a mutual friend at a trivia night. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but my friend begged me to fill in because their team was short a person. Jason was already sitting at the table when I arrived, focused on the answer sheet like it was an exam. He didn't say much at first, just gave me a polite nod and a small smile. When the questions started, I realized he was smart. Not the obnoxious kind that tries to correct everyone, but the kind that casually drops the right answer every time. After we won the game, he congratulated the team and then looked at me and said, "You're interesting." It came out flat, like an observation, not a compliment. We started talking after that. Nothing flirty, just easy. He said he worked in psychology research, which explained why he listened more than he talked. He was curious about people, but in this measured way, like he was studying every word. I didn't think much of it. I just thought he was one of those serious, thoughtful types. After a week of messaging, he asked if I wanted to get dinner. He picked a quiet restaurant outside the city. It wasn't fancy, but it had that cozy, tucked-away feel that makes it easy to talk. He showed up in a plain black shirt, holding a notebook. I joked about it, asked if he was planning to take notes on me, and he laughed softly. "No," he said, "not tonight." Dinner started off fine. He asked questions that were deeper than usual first date stuff. Not what's your favorite movie, but what makes you trust someone? And what do you think people get wrong about you? Heavy stuff for pasta night, but he asked with genuine interest, so I answered. It actually felt nice to talk to someone who seemed to care about the meaning behind things. Then around halfway through the meal, he leaned back, folded his arms, and said, "Can I tell you something strange?" I said, "Sure." He said, "You're part of a project." I laughed, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. He stayed serious. I said, "What do you mean, a project?" And he said, "I've been collecting data on dating behavior for my research. Don't worry, it's anonymous." I blinked at him. "You're studying me?" He shook his head. "Not you specifically. You're one of many participants. I date people and record behavioral observations afterward, communication patterns, emotional responses, that kind of thing." I stared at him, waiting for him to say he was kidding, but he wasn't. He said he'd been doing it for months as part of his independent study. Apparently, his theory was that modern dating could be analyzed like any social experiment. Every person he went out with became a data point. He smiled slightly and said, "You're one of the more open ones so far." I didn't know what to do with that. I asked, "So you're dating people to study them?" He nodded. "Yes, but not in a manipulative way. I just observe interactions. People reveal patterns faster when there's emotional context." I said, "So you pretend to be interested in people for your work?" He frowned, like I'd missed the nuance. "I don't pretend. I am interested, just not romantically." My stomach twisted. He wasn't embarrassed at all. He said it like it was normal, like dating as research was something everyone did on weekends. I told him it was weird and invasive, and he said, "It's not invasive if it's academic." I just stared at him, completely thrown off. He noticed the look on my face and said, "You're upset, which is actually interesting. That reaction shows emotional alignment with previous subjects." Subjects. He actually called me a subject. I told him I wasn't comfortable being part of an experiment, and he said, "You can withdraw at any time. That's part of ethical practice." I almost laughed at how insane it sounded. I said, "You think this is ethical?" And he said, "It's for the sake of understanding human intimacy. Most people act differently when they think someone's analyzing them. I want to study the natural state." The natural state. I sat there for a moment, trying to figure out if he was a genius or just completely detached from reality. The way he talked about it was so calm, like he'd rehearsed this speech before. I wondered how many people he'd told. I asked if anyone else knew. He said his mentor did. Apparently his professor thought it was groundbreaking. He said he even coded his findings afterward: emotion scores, consistency levels, conflict triggers. I asked what my scores were, and he said, "Too early to tell, but you're expressive, which is promising." That was the last straw. I grabbed my bag and said I was leaving. He didn't try to stop me. He just said, "Thank you for your participation." I walked out without looking back. Later that night, I got a text from him. It said, "If it helps, I think you ranked high in empathy." I blocked him. 2 weeks later, I found out he hadn't lied about the research. Someone I knew from university sent me a link to an online psychology journal. There it was, his name listed as a contributor on an independent study titled Behavioral Indicators in Early Romantic Contexts. It described exactly what he told me, observing real-life dating interactions to measure authenticity. The paper didn't mention names, but some of the descriptions were way too specific to be coincidence. One of them described a subject who reacts strongly to perceived deception after initial rapport building. That was me. The paper ended with a line that made my stomach drop. Further trials will continue until measurable stability and emotional consistency is observed. Further trials, meaning he was still out there doing it. Months passed before I stopped thinking about it. I tried to laugh it off, But sometimes I'd be on a date and wonder if the other person was doing the same thing, taking notes afterward, analyzing my words. The thought stuck with me. I told a friend about it once, and she said maybe I was overreacting, that maybe it was just weird but harmless. But it didn't feel harmless. It felt like someone had turned something as human as a date into a lab test. I guess that's what made Jason so strange. He didn't see himself as manipulative. He saw himself as a scientist. And maybe he really believed it, that every awkward laugh, every nervous glance, every spark of connection was just another variable to measure. It's funny. People say dating is all about learning each other. I just didn't realize some people take that literally. Linda looked like the kind of person who didn't need to try to be interesting. Messy hair, genuine smile, holding a coffee cup like she lived off caffeine. Her bio said, "I don't chase, I attract," which usually would have been enough for me to swipe left. But something about her looked familiar. I couldn't place it, but I swiped right anyway. She matched instantly. Our first few messages were normal. She said she was new in town, worked in design, loved dogs, hated pretentious people. The usual. But the difference was how fast she replied. Every time I sent a message, she was already typing back. I joked that she must have notifications turned on, and she said, "Maybe you're just worth answering." It was weirdly flattering, the kind of thing that sticks in your head longer than it should. We talked for hours that night. By the time the sun came up, I felt like I already knew her. We made plans to meet that weekend. She suggested this cafe near the park, said it was quiet and cozy, her favorite spot. I agreed, even though something about her responses felt a little too polished. I brushed it off. Everyone filters their personality online. Saturday came. I showed up early because I didn't want to seem careless. I ordered a coffee and waited by the window. The minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. No Linda. I checked my phone. No texts, no calls. I sent a message. "Hey, everything good?" No reply. I was about to leave when someone sat down across from me. It wasn't Linda. It was a man. Maybe mid-30s, calm face, wearing a plain black jacket. He smiled like he knew me. I said, "Hot, can I help you?" He said, "You're here for Linda, right?" My stomach sank. I asked who he was. He leaned forward and said, "Let's just say I know her better than anyone." I didn't understand what he meant. I asked if Linda sent him. He smiled again and said, "Sort of." Then he slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a live video feed, me sitting in that exact cafe from an angle above the counter. I froze. He said, "You're on camera. Smile." I looked around, scanning the cafe, trying to spot where it was coming from. He said, "Don't bother. You can't see it. It's part of a project." My heart started pounding. I told him this wasn't funny, and he said, "Relax. You're not in trouble. It's just content." Content. That word again. I asked where Linda was. He said, "There's no Linda." The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had moved closer. I stood up to leave, but he gestured toward the door. "If you walk out now, you'll ruin the ending. Sit for 2 more minutes." I should have left, but something about his tone froze me. Calm, steady, like he was used to people doing what he said. He kept talking. Said he was part of a small production group that created social truth videos. Their goal, he explained, was to expose the illusions of modern dating. He said they made fake profiles, matched with people, and recorded their reactions when the truth came up. I stared at him, trying to process it. "You're telling me this is all fake?" He nodded. "You were chosen because your responses sounded honest. You seemed like the kind of person who'd still show up." The way he said it made me feel sick, like I'd been picked for some experiment in humiliation. I said, "Delete whatever you recorded." He said, "We blur faces. It's anonymous." I didn't care. I grabbed his phone and slammed it down on the table, but he didn't flinch. He just said, "You're doing exactly what they all do. Anger before realization." That's when I noticed the waitress near the counter holding her phone up, not filming directly, but angled just enough. My chest went cold. I asked if she was part of this too. He said, "Everyone here knows. It's already over." I left. I didn't say another word. I just walked out into the street, heart hammering, trying not to show how shaken I was. I drove home in silence. Every car behind me felt like it was following me. Every buzz of my phone made me flinch. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. It's just content. The phrase replayed over and over until I almost believed it. 3 days later, the video surfaced online. My friend sent me the link without realizing it was me. The title was, he thought it was a date, but it was a mirror. It had over 200,000 views. The comments were a mix of pity and mockery. People said I handled it better than most, like it was a compliment. Others joked about how I looked too naive to be on Tinder. I didn't finish watching. I just saw enough to know it was real. Me sitting there, confused, while the man explained how dating culture rewards illusion. They'd edited it to make it sound poetic, even added background music. I reported it, but it didn't matter. The account that posted it had thousands of followers. They'd blurred my face, but not enough. Anyone who knew me could tell. I stopped using Tinder after that. Stopped answering unknown numbers. Stopped going to that cafe. Weeks later, a message popped up from a new account. It said, "You handled it better than most." No profile picture, no name. Just that. I deleted it, but it didn't matter. That night, walking home from work, I saw a guy across the street holding up his phone like he was filming. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe not. Now, whenever I meet someone new, I look for the camera before I look at their face, because once you've been turned into someone else's story, you never really know if you're living or performing. And sometimes I still catch myself thinking, what if Linda was real? What if there was a version of her somewhere watching that video, wondering if I'd ever find her? But that's how they get you, isn't it? They make you doubt what's real until everything feels like a lie.